1 minute. I think we're on. I got 7 o'clock. Are we good? Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Select Board meeting. Oops, sorry, hold on, I'm gonna get my computer. Turn it off. It's doing its thing again. Anyway, sorry. It's not gonna work. Anyway. This is the meeting of February 22, 2022. So a big date in the numerology world for people who are into that sort of thing. We have tonight, we're missing Zach Burns tonight, but we have Jim Salvi, Courtney Fresha, and Megan Birch McMichael. Just to confirm guidelines while we're still under remote meetings, that if, unless we have a non-unanimous vote, I will not ask for a roll call. Also, just remember that Stow TV is recording this meeting, so for anybody who's either speaking in person or on the screen, please just be aware of that. And I will ask if there's any public comment, since my computer doesn't want to work for me. Do you see anybody?
No one has raised their hand.
Okay, just a couple quick announcements on my side. Again, I want to thank Denise and her DEI team for an incredible series of posts for Black History Month. It's been really interesting, and I'm learning more things every week, so thank you for that. The Nashoba school budget hearing is this Tuesday at 6:30. The Zoom information is posted on their website. And I actually think those are the only 2 things I had. Does anybody have anything else? All right. So, and recognitions. Any recognitions? No. Okay. So our first is the very exciting appointment of our new fire captain, Barry Evers. So, Chief, why don't you tell us a little about Mr. Evers, and then we'll get my computer to stop.
I've known Mr. Evers since he's been about this tall. Barry has been with the department for 17 years now.
21.
21. I am getting older. Barry has been full-time. He has held various positions throughout the department, including training officer, recruit training. He has been a call lieutenant, working very well with his group. He is the current water hole coordinator. So he's been working on the project of cisterns throughout the town, as well as dry hydrants. He has excelled in a lot of the training that's necessary for the position of not only a chief officer, but also in code compliance and prevention. And I'm thrilled to have him as the captain of the department. I think he will do very well. He's very dedicated to the fire service and to the town of Stowe.
Well, we're excited to have you. Do you have anything you want to say about?
I was born and raised in this town. I was really fortunate enough to be able to serve the town, and it's the only place I've ever wanted to be. So I'm very happy. I'm ecstatic about this.
Great, it's great. And yeah, Denise, you want to add anything?
If I could.
Yeah.
So we were fortunate enough to have 3 exceptional candidates for the position. They were highly qualified. Barry clearly stood out as the top candidate. I think, his experience and his time with the department will suit both him and the department well in this next chapter, becoming captain. I think he's a great fit for the chief, and I think they'll work collaboratively together, and it'll be a good pairing for us.
It's really exciting to have you. And it's always nice to hear someone who's born and raised here and still here. So, it's now the 2 of you, right? It's very exciting. So I will take a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to appoint Barry Evers to the position of Fire Captain for the Stowe Fire Department effective immediately for the remainder of a 1-year term expiring June 30th, 2022, and subject to reappointment at that time.
Second.
Any comments from the board? I didn't ask if you guys wanted to add in.
Can I just say one thing?
Of course.
Chief, am I correct? I think Barry was very instrumental in advancing and professionalizing our call program, correct?
Yes, he is very instrumental in the recruit program, the 10 to 15 week program that we operate through the fire department. He has organized it, the syllabus, and has also been very instrumental in working with other department members to fulfill the tasks.
Yep. I think that's all something that we're really proud of here in Stowe, is
Yeah, absolutely.
how we brought along the call program. Thank you, Barry. Congratulations.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
thank you.
It is impressive. Yeah, anything else? All right.
I'm just
I'm
really
sorry.
impressed to know that that you guys have, both of you, as residents, have dedicated yourselves, to public service in town. It's just makes it feels really sweet to me to live in a town like this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well said. I will make the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
No clapping, no shaking hands, but we'll clap for you. And I'm glad you finished.
Yay.
Yeah.
Jen, present him with his captain's badge.
Do you wanna come over here, or you can walk around wherever you'd like to go to take pictures? Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please take a picture with the masks off.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
You're married, I hope.
And if you, if anyone in the family wants to get in, you can all,
That's right.
get in there.
You wanna get in, buddy?
Great. All right, well, thank you all for coming, appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, last year for the next one.
Yeah, that's very handy for wedding.
Is that like a diffusion?
It'll be.
Very nice. I think I know what I want for my birthday.
So we have another appointment to the fire department of Matheus Alves to the position of Call EMT,
Yes.
coming through our high school.
He is through the Nashoba Regional High School. He has just turned 18, so he's been anxious to get on the fire department as an EMT. He lives local, lives on Wheeler Road. This is something that we have been trying to work on for the last couple of years of involving strictly EMTs into the department as a resource for medical response, not only for the primary ambulance, but as for the secondary ambulance as well. So he is very anxious to get going, and we look forward to having him on board.
That's great. Is this the first time we've had one of the Nashoba EMTs here?
Yes.
That's so
We've had a
cool.
couple other people. They're much older,
Mhm.
but this is the first EMT cadet, or I shouldn't say cadet, he's a full-fledged EMT.
Yeah.
Coming right from
We
Nashoba.
came from Nashoba, that's great.
Wonderful.
Really exciting. Yeah, cool.
So he did the full EMT program?
Through Nashoba, yes.
He's nationally and state certified.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I feel better that only, it's always been Bolton gets them all, so this is, I don't ill will, but it's nice to have one
Yes.
as part of our program. It's such a great program, so thank you for finding him. Thank you for Matthew for joining us. So any other comments, or I will take a motion then.
Madam Chair, I move to appoint Matheus Alves to the position of Call EMT for the Stowe Fire Department, effective immediately for the remainder of a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2022, and subject to reappointment at that time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimous, great. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Chief.
Our next appointment is tree worker Colin Taranto. Highway Department, is Steve on, or I don't know if we need,
Steve is, but Colin's been with us for a couple of years now. He is eager to grow within the department. He has been actively taking trainings to prepare him. He still has a few to take, but we feel that within 6 months, he'll be fully certified with the requirements. So we believe that the hands-on learning will be invaluable to him and quite frankly to the department. So we've been working with one tree worker. It'll be nice to have a backup and some redundancy within the department. and then we will have to backfill his laborer position, but we will hopefully do that soon.
Terrific. Any questions for anybody? Then I will take a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to appoint Colin Taranto to the position of tree worker in the Highway Department effective February 25th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, great. Keep filling out those positions and bringing on more. Next, you have two nominees for the SpringFest committee. This is terrific, I'm so glad to see. Jackie Spataro. Is Jackie with, you said, I know you said Carol Ann.
And I don't see Jackie, she was gonna try and make it, but yes, it doesn't look like either of them are on. They are both eager to participate. Carol Ann, and I apologize to Carol, I forgot the E at the end of her name. They're very excited, they have a lot of ideas. Carol Ann has done this for a number of years with different organizations that she's worked for. She is eager to start meeting and hopes to be able to pull something off for the spring, whether or not it's just a concert or something, but really wants to work with the group. She's been in town for a couple of years. Jackie is well-known, participates in a lot of local groups, is friends with Megan, who's already on the committee, and is looking forward to working with them to bring something forth, whether or not it's this year, whether it's a different event or a different time of year, but they are eager to get something going.
And Carol Ann's resume made it look like she lives in Sudbury, but she does live in Stowe.
She lives in Stowe. She moved from Sudbury. She had friends here and moved here from Sudbury just about 2 years ago.
Great. Just wanted to double check this. I think we have a residency requirement, I don't know. I'm just grateful that the two of them stepped up so that we can hopefully have something. Even something small would be great,
So it was
so.
great because we had a question about it last meeting.
Yes, right, and then we get two names, I know,
Yeah,
pretty
a
awesome.
quick response.
Yes, yeah. Maybe we just do the motion together for both names?
That's fine with me, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Madam Chair, I move to appoint Jackie Spataro and Carol Ann Baer to the SpringFest Committee for the remainder of a 2-year term expiring June 30th, 2023.
Second?
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous, great. Thank you, Jackie and Carol Ann. All right, Denise, on to you.
All right.
How's JP?
Yes, it was. JP's on in his car. Okay, so I will do you mind if I take this off to
Yeah,
do my
no.
next few? All right, so my report first. Some of this will play in later, but the current COVID count as of today is 20 cases in town. We are down to a 4.63% positivity rating, which if you notice in the packet, the letter I wrote on Thursday, we were still at 8%. So it is dramatically dropping week after week down to what is happening across the state. Very low cases. There are some variants swirling around in the rest of the world, but they're keeping an eye on those right now to see what is going to happen with that. But I think for the time being, we seem to be in a good place with the current counts. Community preservation met last week and voted to support the library request for $1 million and the smart affordable housing request at $1.1 million. Reluctantly, they did not approve the town hall project, but vowed to work with the town hall committee before the next round opens up in December to see how this can be funded. There was a lot of discussion over 2 meetings, 2 subsequent Mondays, and it was very reluctantly that they chose not to support it, but until they have some additional information and rework the numbers, the 25-year borrowing projections were at a higher interest than what was expected, so they were a little concerned about that. Capital Planning's has been meeting. They met last Thursday with the police department and the highway department. They will need to have some ongoing meetings, likely with the highway department, between the Lake Boone Dam repairs that we're still trying to figure out what the right thing to do with the dam repairs is, and Steve's request to do a feasibility study on the highway department itself. there are some additional meetings that will likely take place, but they have their schedule planned for their other 2 meetings in March and hope to wrap up their meetings by March 31st. For those that may have missed the presentation right after our last meeting with the Masters Academy folks, the link to that meeting can be found on our website through either the town administrator or the planning department pages. It's very informative. It's about an hour and a half. There were a lot of questions answered. Talks a little bit about their timeline and the process, and will give folks a good understanding about what they're planning. I did hear from council today that they have delayed the closing by another month. So we were expecting them to close in March, so it's likely April, so it will likely be around that time that they'll start applying for their permits here. Kathy Safera and I have been actively working with council and Stowe Acres on the purchase and sale and the retained rights agreement for the North Course. We're hoping to get that wrapped up in the near future, and then we can just focus on obtaining the funding to finalize that project. So that is in the works and actively being worked on. We meet as a group every month, and then a much smaller group of Kathy and I and council and Stowe Acres, we've been meeting on a weekly basis to try and get that all squared away. So hopefully that will be finalized shortly. A reminder that town meeting warrant articles are due Friday, April 1st. I have not received one to date, so I'm hoping that people are still working on them. We still have a month, so, but just a reminder, Friday, April 1st. And then I wanted to let folks know about our bylaws that some may not know or are not familiar with. Our bylaw on private roads and private ways. So in accordance with Article 5, Section 3 of our bylaws, funds appropriated at town meeting for repairs on private ways may only be utilized under the following conditions. The repair shall include only the filling of holes in the subsurface of the road. The public way must have been open to the public for at least 10 years. And repairs may not include construction, reconstruction, or resurfacing of these roads. We got a lot of calls and a lot of complaints on private ways, and folks are looking for the highway department to do major repair work, resurfacing. We are not allowed to do that. If folks would like to have their roadways accepted, the process is right in our bylaws in Article 5. They would have to make sure that their road is brought up to the standards that an engineer would have to sign off on, that it meets the acceptability of our ordinances and bylaws. And it does need to go to town meeting with, I think it's 75% of the folks living on that street approving to go forward with it. And there's some other requirements as well. But folks need to remember that main roads and accepted roadways will take precedent over highway resources. So right now, they're out there filling potholes. They are going to do 117, 62, the main roads before we get to private ways. If and when they get there, there is no guarantee. There's only a small amount of funding that is appropriated every year for private way maintenance. So folks need to, if you're not sure if you live on a private way, you can reach out to the highway department. But please keep that in mind, especially during the winter, especially right now with the season that we've had with the icing. And I know that the roads are in tough shape and they're working hard to take care of that. And then the last thing for this list is just a reminder that I will be on vacation now as of Thursday afternoon, returning to the office on Monday, March 7th. Dolores is here if anything goes on in my absence, but everything should be fine. So that's all I have for that report.
I just want to add that the master's presentation really was really informative, and I really appreciated that their team was very forthcoming, really willing to share and to answer pretty much every question that came up. So it was, I thought it was great. If you didn't get to see it or folks didn't get to see it, I definitely encourage people to watch it.
Yes, and we did, I was able to capture the questions and provided them to the planning department so that when they do start the public hearing process, the planning board will know there were a lot of questions surrounding traffic. So they will have those questions and be able to use those in the beginning of the process instead of as they go through it. So that will be a help.
My overall impression from it was there were questions about traffic. But compared to other possible uses at that site, we got very lucky.
Yeah.
If this goes through.
Right.
And yes, they were a very good team, but I just kept, you can, any use that's gonna be an ongoing business is gonna have some traffic. But this is predictable, it's not gigantic, there's no industrial sludge being, there's no waste.
Right.
We got very, very lucky if this goes through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, and I would think that the traffic, from what I heard, I mean, for years won't be as much as, certainly not even close to what Bose had anticipated they would have, and I don't even think as much as they actually probably had in terms of the number of cars.
That's what they were saying, and I certainly don't have traffic counts, but Bose at its peak, I don't know. Compared to Masters at its peak, fair question, but I just think compared to things like the Amazon
Distribution center,
being
yeah.
on
No,
Liberty Square Road, Square Road or something like that.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, I think it's really exciting. Okay, then ready to move on to your presentation.
I am. Okay. All right, so let's just get right in there. So, this is obviously a snapshot of what fiscal '23 will look like, given what we know today. There are still a lot of unknowns. There's still a lot of budgetary unknowns, but we will go through some of those this evening. I'm gonna start with free cash, something that everyone likes to see. We are a very fortunate community that we have healthy free cash every year. And while it does fluctuate, we're still, I look at some of our surrounding towns that have a couple of $100,000 in free cash and that's it. And they really struggle to make ends meet or pay for their capital. So you can see the trend for the last 6 years. Fiscal '22, we ended June 30th, 2021 at just over $2 million. As our revenues fluctuate with our expenditures, obviously that number will change. But that is, as I said, is still a very good and healthy number. The goal, I'm gonna close this, minimize this other one. So the goal is for free cash alone to be on or above 5%, and for fiscal '22, we're at 6.9% of free cash, so that's fantastic. Our next account is stabilization. So another snapshot, we're at $739,000 with interest accrued through last week, that was posted. We are still looking to build that back up from the funds that were utilized at town meeting for fiscal '20 for Lower Village. My appropriation for fiscal '23 will be $200,000 again, which means we'll be back at the levels that we were in fiscal '19. So that's fantastic for us to be at that point. What does that mean? So free cash and stabilization combined as available funds for the budget. While we have decreased over the years, we're still just about 10%. We're at 9.44%, so we're just under the 10% threshold. Obviously, as our budget continues to grow by more than $200,000, which we're putting into stabilization, and with free cash fluctuating, that number is up in the air from year to year, but it's still very healthy, and we are right around that 10% mark. So if we continue to make our contributions to stabilization, then we don't need to rely as heavily on free cash and revenues and expenditures if we have a year like a COVID year and the revenues aren't what they have been in the past. Our snow and ice figures. So as of today, we have 17,000 and change remaining in the line item. At our last meeting, I think it was our last meeting, you voted the deficit spending authorization. We have an invoice that came in for 23,000 for salt. And now they're predicting 6 to 12 inches on Friday. So the remaining balance will be gone with the salt bill, and then we'll see how we make out with the snow. The good news is it should just be a day, and then the sun should come out for the weekend and melt everything after we've plowed and salted the road. So it is what it is for the end of February, beginning of March.
Right.
Hopefully, this will be sort of winding down. I would say we've been lucky with snow. It's the ice events that we've had this year. Hopefully that will quiet down as we approach March. Our OPEB trust, something else that we've been able to fund nicely. So our current liability is just, well, almost $7.5 million, $7.4 million. With our fiscal 22 appropriation, we're at over $1 million in our trust fund. So that has been fantastic. I was just double checking the numbers today from our fiscal 18 to our fiscal 20 actuarial, and our liability was much higher in fiscal 18 and it decreased over the years. So I'm hoping that when we have our fiscal 22 actuarial done, that we'll see our liability decrease further as the market changes or the rates change, as our retirees and their ages change, that affects the actuarial values. So hopefully, if we continue to appropriate into it, I am recommending the $235,000 of free cash. That's been the standard for the last few years, so we will appropriate that again and continue to build up our trust fund. So fiscal 22, this should be no surprise. This pie chart will look the same pretty much every year. 67% of our budget goes to education, followed by general government and public safety, debt, public works, and other. So, the numbers may change slightly, but the percentages always tend to work out this way, just given the budget amounts for those specific categories. So I expect fiscal 23 may shift a little bit, given the increases in the school, which we will talk about, but it will look very similar to this. On the flip side, the revenue, again, will look very similar to this in the foreseeable future. 90% of our revenue comes in from the tax levy. Local receipts, state aid, and other make up other small, very small amounts, but the majority of our funding is from the tax levy, which we are fortunate that folks in town like to pay their bills and pay their bills on time. Our fiscal 23 estimated new growth is up from 200,000 to 270,000 is what Kristen is estimating. This is just a snapshot from the DOR's website of how they show our current statistics. Our population estimate's just over 7,000. The income per capita at 71,000. And then some of the average single family amounts, which I will show a little more in depth on the next slide. This is very interesting. So here is a 10-year breakdown of our single family values, the number of parcels we have, the tax bill, and the tax rate. So you'll see the tax rate is broken down to the percent of value. It's based on the thousands versus the 100,000.
Can we minimize the?
Yes.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Oops. Oh, maybe it doesn't want to go away. Okay. So the per capita income in town has increased by 45% since 2013. The number of parcels has increased by 2%. The value in town has increased 34%, but yet our tax rate is the lowest it's been since before 2015. So in 2014, it was 1920 and change, and right now we're at 1960 and change. Obviously, as the values go up, the tax rate tends to decrease to still collect the same amount of money at the end of every fiscal year. But I thought this was an interesting snapshot of where we've come from, and you can see how dramatically the value has increased, and the collective value has increased in Stowe, which, we are fortunate to have that. You'll see the rank of communities. We were hovering much higher in the 20s. We're back down to sort of the mid-30s. Still not great. We still have a high tax rate.
This is of all the towns or municipalities in the
Yes.
state? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have a single tax rate and we are primarily residential. So communities that have businesses and have split rates, you'd see their ranking much lower, but we are not fortunate in that aspect. We've talked a lot over the last few months about ARPA. This is just a snapshot of where we stand. So we are expecting a total of 2.1 million in federal funds through the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. The SelectBoard is the authority to determine how to spend those funds, and to date, you've made the following allocations. $10,000 for the administrative costs, $75,000 towards addressing the COVID response, $500,000 towards PFAS remediation for the former fire station site, $100,000 for discretionary funding for me to spend, which includes closing out former approved projects, $100,000 for community-initiated projects, and $600,000 for capital projects, which leaves $777,000 and change for future allocations. The first round of funding we made March 1st, so I've received a number of requests that we will be reviewing in the month of March to start figuring out how else we will spend the remaining funds. So let's talk about our budget drivers for fiscal '23. Bless you.
Thank you.
So the budget requests are $31,863,342. That is up $1.9 million from the fiscal '22 budget, represents an overall increase of 6.56%. However, the proposed increase from Minuteman and Nashoba combined make up $1.1 million of that increase. Capital requests are up 1,548%. With a total, and total is not exact because I took out some of the projects, but $15 million, $15.7 million. That includes $6.5 million for the library because $2 million is coming through other avenues. Right now we have $4.5 million as a placeholder for the dam repairs. There's $2.5 million for Stowe Acres, majority of which is coming from CPC. And it does include the capital projects that we will be discussing later tonight that I'm putting forward as ARPA funds. So overall, the only other really big item is repairs and upgrades to this town building water system, which we are still trying to decide how we're gonna move forward with. If you'll recall last year, as Craig was retiring, he submitted a request for a feasibility study for the water system here. Frank is still reviewing that. We've tossed around the possibility of abandoning the water system in this building and connecting to the Pompo system, which is a clean well, instead of having to remediate this system and put in new piping. That's what the 1.25 represents, was if we were to do the extreme and do that. I don't think we're leaning in that direction. The proposal to remediate this building, I think is doable, and I think is something that we will likely move forward with now and see if that can get us, 10, 15 more years of this water system before we're looking at alternatives. I know Steve Jelinek is on. I believe he'll probably talk about some of these a little bit later, and the remaining requests that have been submitted. Minuteman. So Minuteman High School, the driving factor for their increase is, I'm gonna actually slip to the next slide. So this is just a snapshot of their total enrollment, is projected at 700 students. You'll see that 620 are from member towns and only 80 are from non-member towns. You'll see that since 2016, the non-member enrollment has been decreasing. That is because as the member town enrollments increase, it leaves less spaces for non-member towns, therefore driving up the in-district cost. So the in-districts are covering almost all of the costs now. Previously, the out-of-district enrollment, they were paying more than we were per pupil. So without that additional funding, the member communities are picking up more of the cost. The assessment breaks down. For fiscal '22, we were at 43 kids. They are projecting 57 kids for fiscal '23, 14 more kids attending. Our enrollment for the 4-year average is at 38.75. I think it was I think it's 5 years ago was sort of another high year. Hopefully, I think that'll drop off either in the next year or two, and then we should see that rolling average lower. The share of operating cost and capital are fairly standard. You'll see the minimum required contribution is $971,000, and then it breaks down transportation and operating costs for the total assessment, which I'll go into a little bit more. So here's that breakdown. So here is our transportation assessment at $48,000, the operating assessment at $596,000, the debt and capital at $106,000, including the minimum contribution at $971,000 for a subtotal of $1.7 million. And then we have the debt service that was approved through Prop 2.5. So that brings our total assessment to $2,145,000 or 35.7% increase.
Well, and one of the problems with the out-of-school thing is that they run out of space, right?
They have run out of
Actually maxed
space.
out for the new school so that's, I mean, it's a good problem, except for that it means no out-of-school tuition.
It is, and you know, obviously the in-towns get priority, so I think we have one more year of another community that has since left the district, and so their students will be sort of winding down as well. So if you know of any other towns that wanna join in, sign them up. So, you know, I would expect that we will see, you know, maybe another year of increases as these out-of-district kids continue to work their way out. But I would envision that soon we're almost entirely in district. I think we're gonna continue that trend for quite some time. They're looking to add some new exciting programs. They're looking at a veterinary program and an on-site facility. So it's really attracting a lot of kids. You know, we Lancaster used to be the highest in our region, and now we've topped them, so. Now we'll talk about Nashoba. So Nashoba preliminary enrollment, the expectation is Stowe will have 1,146 kids, to Bolton and Lancaster just over, hovering around 1,000. Those numbers are coming closer together than they have been in the past. The 5-year total. So you will see that we were, in October of 2012, we had 1,200 kids in the district. We actually were at an all-time low last year, or October of 2020 at just over 1,000, and now it's 1,100. So our 5-year total is at the 5,700, which over the 5 years, it's considerably higher than Bolton and Lancaster. So what does that mean? It means that our percentage is 36.4% of the enrollment, and that the operating cost shall be apportioned based on the 5-year total. So we have a higher 5-year total, we will have a higher 5-year assessment percentage. So with Nashoba, here's their minimum local contribution. Breakdown for the 3 communities. Our minimum local is 10.5 million. Lancaster at 7.8, Bolton at 9.7 million, for a total minimum contribution of $28 million. Their proposed budget is $62 million. So with their minimum contribution of $28 million and a total budget of $62 million, how do they make that up? So $544,000 is debt. $12,144,000 is state and local revenue. Some of their Chapter 70, they have ESSER funds, they have other funds that have come in. So that's assessing $49 million with the local contribution. That leaves $21,677,000 as what they call the variable assessment. So that all goes into the total budget and then ultimately our assessment. So here's how the increase breaks down, and I will add the caveat. So as of last week, we were at a 3.11% increase, which equates to $562,000, almost the same as the 35% increase through Minuteman. However, the union negotiations have wrapped up, but the contracts have not been ratified. So once those are ratified, and once the transportation contracts have been finalized, a 0.4 to a 0.5% decrease is expected on those percentage increases. So we would be looking at under 3%, just under 3% for our fiscal '23 increase. So as I said, Minuteman and Nashoba combined is about $1.1 million of increases of the 1.9 requests that have come in so far. Not sure how this is gonna play out. Lancaster, for those of you who were on the Nashoba budget presentation last week, Lancaster's in a precarious situation and they're really struggling to figure out how they are going to cover an $800,000 increase when their new growth and new revenue is $700,000 and change combined. So they are struggling to figure it out. I think Bolton will be okay. I think it's a tight situation for them, but I think he'll be able to make it work. Lancaster, I think anyone who was on there will have sympathy for the representative that was there. It's a tough situation for them. It's very unfortunate. Health insurance, we got a number last week at an 8.5% increase for our health insurance. We are through the Minuteman Nashoba, the Minuteman Nashoba Regional Health Consortium. So 8.5 is the overall increase. It does change per plan, so we're still trying to cost that out and see how it will impact us. Dolores is in the process of doing a review of our insurance plan to see what the comparable cost would be through the GIC and other plans to see if we are in the right plan for our community. I will say we do have the consortium that we're in it's good. The increases, even though it's 8.5%, have been relatively low. But as plans are merging and dropping, it's leaving us limited to the plans that we're offering employees. So if we could look at something like the GIC that will offer, 5 or 6 plans versus I think we're down to 2 or 3, we will at least go through the exercise to see what the rates would be in comparison for our utilization here. So looking ahead to fiscal '23. So obviously Minuteman and Nashoba, we're looking at more than $1 million for their increase. The cost to update and improve our failing facilities is increasing every year that we put off updates, repairs. It's adding more and more to the cost, and we're finding that out with a number of our facilities. Just doing minimal work, it's just eating up more and more of our funding. You'll see in the budget that the separate education incentive is gone, so there will not be a separate article for that education incentive. The good news is it increases the transparency of salary line items. The bad news is it looks like everybody is getting a huge raise, which is not the case, and we will go over that when the budget comes out. It's just that separate $145,000 worth of funding is rolled into the salary lines. In addition, if you'll recall, last year we implemented the new salary and classification schedules with a cost of $80,000 that is also now incorporated into the line items. So the percentages on the salary increases are shocking, but it's not actually those increases. It's just now showing them all in their line items. The tax rate is still high and has not been adversely affected by COVID, which is great for us. As I said earlier, people like to pay their bills, they pay them on time, which is great for us, and it continues with our cash flow. And this year we have ARPA funds, which gives us more flexibility on using free cash and how we will use that, or if we will use that to the same extent that we have been in the past. So that has been a benefit to us tremendously. So my recommendations right now, while I have not finalized the budget until I have solid numbers on the schools, mainly Nashoba, I can't finalize some of the requests, but this is what I'm looking at as of right now. So I mentioned we'll continue to fund the OPEB trust with an annual appropriation of $235,000. I say at least because that's the commitment that we've sort of made internally, but if we have additional funding and can add additional money to that, that's a great place to put it, as is stabilization. So we will continue to make, an annual appropriation to the stabilization account for fiscal '23. We will start to make improvements to the facilities department by budgeting for regular building maintenance and adding custodial hours. Dolores has done a calculation of the square footage in our building in comparison to the staff needed to maintain that square footage, and we are light on the facilities department. I have been working with Frank and Doug to realign facilities. And what's been happening here in the past is while we had a facilities department as part of the building department, no one's really owned it. People call anyone that they need to get help, to get something fixed. I want it to be streamlined. I've worked with, or talked to both Doug and Frank about having Doug be the point person so that requests can be tracked, spending can be tracked, someone actually knows what's pending. Hopefully this will help schedule work, coordinate that things are done at the same time. It just so happens that we had, the heat in Pompo went, the heat in the police station went, we're having heating issues in this building, and it was all like a week after each other. So trying to get some of those on regular schedules and budgeted for in advance for preventative maintenance is huge for us. So that's something that I am committed to doing. And adding additional resources to Pompo with the creation of a part-time front desk person to help both recreation, council on aging, facilities, sort of triage what's going on there. Allison's done a great job filling it in with senior work-off folks, but we feel that it's best to have someone consistent in there. If I can fund 2 part-time people to have more coverage, I will. But at a minimum, I will be recommending at least 1 part-time person there. The fire was represented here this evening. I will be continuing to support and invest in their hybrid call model by adding additional wages for ambulance coverage. And as I mentioned a month or so ago, supporting the request for a SAFER grant to bring in 4 additional full-time firefighters. That would fund firefighters for, it's approximately, I think I do cover it on the next slide. It's approximately $300,000 for the 4 years. It covers their benefits and their salaries. So I think that would be huge, and the step that we do need to take to ensure that we have proper full-time coverage on all shifts and then supplement it with the call model. We are very fortunate that we have a robust call department and they do respond. But there are times when folks may not be available or, there is some lack of accountability when there's not someone that actually owns those shifts. They're filling in, we do have per diems, but to have a full-time person guaranteed on all shifts, especially overnight, would be huge for us. One of the things we will be doing this year, you'll see in the town meeting warrant, is we are redesigning the pay scale for the recreation summer staff. Last year, we did the classification and wages for full-time and part-time regular employees. Now we're looking at the pay scales for what I'll call our non-regular employees. Our recreation summer staff, we're looking at it for the fire department as well. Looking at, Dolores has done a lot of salary surveys. So the proposed recreation scale will streamline the positions. We had 4 or 5 different categories of lifeguards. Because it was the only way, if someone came back the following year, they would have an increase in pay because there were no steps afforded to them. So this would actually be a traditional step schedule. If someone comes back year after year, they would increase a step. There's an incentive to obviously returning to work. Many communities have started recruiting for their summer help, and we're all in the same situation. We're competing with pay of Shaw's and McDonald's, that folks are getting paid a lot more money to stay inside where it's air conditioned and, bag groceries or hand out burgers versus actually working outside in the summer and in the sun. So it's tough for us. And hopefully by redesigning the pay scale, there'll be some incentive for folks to come back year after year and would save on obviously training costs and recruiting costs. And then finally, one of our goals is to continue to work with our state and federal legislators on earmarked funds for Stowe and to continue to seek out and apply for grants in all municipal areas. So As you know, this Thursday, we will be receiving the ceremonial $300,000 from Rep. Hogan on the ARPA funds to install 6 fire cisterns. We have submitted our letter of intent for a $1 million MVP grant for the Stowe Acres acquisition. The first step was submitting a letter. We then had a virtual meeting with the state to discuss our application, and then I believe it's in March, they'll release the application for us to formally apply. But they gave us a lot of good feedback based on our letter of what we could include and should not include for increasing our possibility for receiving grant funding. We have applied for $1 million grant for the Lake Boone Dam, and we hopefully will hear about that soon. And the $300,000 approximately safer grant for the 4 full-time firefighters. So, actually JP in the hallway just told me that he received 2 other much smaller grants under $10,000, but to me, in small communities, obviously we're 90% tax base. Every penny helps. Department heads here and employees are great at finding grants, applying for grants, and we have been lucky that we have been receiving a number of grants from the state agencies, and hopefully that will continue. We do still have our one federal earmark that we're waiting to hear on for Track Road. I think that's sort of been pushed off to the wayside, but we are waiting, and we're still in the pipeline. So hopefully something will come through with that. And that is the end of my presentation. So, questions?
I mean, you did just start answering, my first question was like, who writes all these grants? But every department is essentially responsible for writing their own grants.
Yes.
It's impressive.
Yes, it
That
is.
on top of everything else, they're getting grants written, so. I wish that we could find a way to help them with that, but as someone who has to write grants all the time, it's a time consuming, hard to hand
Yes.
off, but.
Ideally, in a perfect world, I would have a full-time procurement and grant person in one.
Yeah.
Because procurement departments are spending a lot of time trying to do their own procurement as well, because there's just not enough time dedicated to that alone, so.
On the water system for the building, and maybe I'm mixing up different issues around water, but wasn't there some discussion about separate, this is the system that also includes the library and the church and private homes?
Yes.
Is that all also still in play in terms of how we would potentially separate out? Or if you were just gonna work on this building, as you were talking about it, pushing, basically getting it to last another X number of years, would that keep that same system then in place?
So we're not entirely sure. Ideally, we would like to remove the non-municipal buildings from the public water supply. There is a tremendous amount of piping that goes from the library down to the church, and we have had a number of leaks in that stretch of pipe. So looking at the cost of replacing that will be part of the feasibility study to see if it's worth doing that. Perhaps it's worth us building a separate well for the church and handing it off and taking them off our system. The same with the residential, there's one residential home. So that is all being looked at as part of this study.
Thanks. Other questions? Jim, I'm sure you have questions.
Only 2. Actually, I have one question and a comment. Thank you for that, Denise. It was, again, it's great to see pie charts and everything like that, very helpful. The question is, you confused me on one thing. You said our liability has gone down on OPEB. Did you mean our unfunded liability? Because the liability, the actual liability would only go down if, like, we were hiring less people or retirees were dying faster, but.
No, the percentage, the accrual percentage went down, so it impacted our net liability, was decreased from 18 to 20.
Oh, why did the accrual percentage go down?
I don't know. But when I reviewed that, we were over $8 million of net liability in June 30th, 2018, and 7 and change for 2020. And it was because the percentage decreased.
Wow, okay. Actuarial changes maybe.
Yep. So we are due June 30th of this year, so we'll see where we stand after this year.
And my comment is just on the free cash. I think it's very impressive that, I think it's 3 years after we devoted a substantial and unexpected amount of stored assets to Lower Village. We're back up in the same range. We're not quite there, but to be perfectly honest, when we were bumping up against we were over 2.8 million on free cash, that was bordering on embarrassing. So, I would think 2.5 to 2.7 is about as high, and you're at 2.2 on 2.1,
No,
2.2.
1.7 was stabilization. I'm
free-
sorry, 735,000 is free cash is 2 million.
Okay,
The plan would be, hopefully around the 2.2 million as free cash. I agree, I think, I actually got calls from surrounding towns asking how we could possibly make out with $2.8 million in free cash. Because it is, at that point, we really need to reevaluate our revenue.
right. And so let's say 2.5, but we're in the same range, only 3 years after that, so that's very good, thank you.
Welcome.
Do you guys have questions?
I don't have any questions, no, I thank you for putting it together.
I'll just say, this is to the Nashoba budget, having heard that presentation last week, that, I hope that they'll take seriously the pressure that's under Lancaster, because we are a region, we're not just concerned about what it does to Stowe. And I think their use of the ARPA funds is poorly used, honestly. Compared to what we're doing in terms of trying to take things off of our budget by using ARPA funds, and they're adding things on using ARPA funds, which particularly positions just doesn't make sense. So just my public comment on the school committee budget, because I think, it's, it's not gonna be easy for anybody, and maybe easiest on Stowe than only because of our history here and the work you're doing, but it's really, it's unrealistic, at this point in time, I think, so. Just had to add that in. Any thoughts? Okay.
And I will say, so Steve Jelinek is on. Steve, I don't know if you want to comment on capital thus far?
Yeah, I'm here. I would like to actually first correct you, Denise. As a taxpayer, I don't know anybody that likes paying their taxes. What I will say about capital though is, I always get up at capital at town meeting and I always say stuff like, our average capital expenditure annual number is typically on the order of, half to $600,000. Well, up until FY20, that was the case. When FY20 rolled around and we had to spend $4 million, including a whole bunch of money on Lower Village, I said that's an aberration. We'll probably never see that again. And now here we are 3 years later, talking about spending $15 million. And okay, 11 million of that is for a library building upgrade that's been long overdue, and having to repair, Lake Boone Dam, which is probably even more overdue. We're still talking about a $500 million capital hit. Some of that is offset obviously by the ARPA funding and spending $500,000 on, just over 500,000 on things that we would normally have kind of considered to be normal capital, is certainly a great benefit. The fact that we still have a couple of other things that are a bit up in the air, the town building water system upgrade is obviously one of those. I don't expect we're gonna spend the 1.25 million that we had talked about, but we don't really know what that number is gonna be looking like yet. The other big ticket item that the building department is talking about is the town building generator. I don't know if we have any further updates on that particular number, but I'm kind of holding out hope that we're not gonna spend $250,000 on a generator for the town building. Having said that, it's entirely clear to me that, we're not in a kind of a normal capital year. And, even if you look at the ARPA funds combined with the sort of regular capital funds that are outside of the two things I just mentioned, we're still talking about something in the neighborhood of $1 million. And, that's just the way it seems to have been for the last few years. I was kind of hopeful that we wouldn't be seeing that, going forward, but I'm not convinced that we won't. So that's just, maybe we're into a new normal.
How much of that is it tying to what Denise was talking about, our sort of, well, it's not deferred maintenance anymore, it's just, we've just delayed repairs and maintenance and stuff. Is there things on your list that you feel are part of that sort of longer term issue, or is this?
I mean, I guess you could put the water system as part of that. There's some highway projects, actual like culvert replacements and those sorts of things that, are starting to become more part of the sort of lexicon that Steve uses for his annual requests. Vehicles are more expensive. I don't think that's really deferred maintenance. We just, we kind of, need to buy new snowplows every year, and they cost $300,000. And, there are a few things that are on the sort of horizon that, you could argue, kind of look at, could be considered to be kind of deferred maintenance. But on the other hand, like a new building for the, highway department isn't really deferred. We've gotten, 40 years of sort of use out of the highway barn that's there. That's not on the, ticket for this year necessarily, but they, Steve is looking at a feasibility study to figure out what that building might need to look like. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not so sure it's deferred maintenance. I think it's just the cost of a lot of stuff has kind of hit us all at once, and there's a bunch of things that are, kind of more expensive than they used to be. We used to spend $30,000 a year on a police cruiser. Now we spend, almost 50. So, but anybody who's bought a car recently kind of knows that that's just some of the way things go. Anyway.
Thanks. Any other questions for Steve?
Can I add one thing? On deferred maintenance, there is that. There has always been that on our buildings and our roads. I actually think that's a big thing that we're not talking about. But one thing I've learned from the library project and Pompo is this whole concept of grandfathering of buildings from certain legal requirements. Everything's fine. It's usable. You can occupy it as long as you don't touch it. But once you touch a building or touch a sidewalk, all of a sudden the building code requirements come out and the ADA requirements come out. And they have changed so much since we put in this infrastructure. And let's face it, Massachusetts demands the best. It's just incredibly expensive if you want to do even the slightest renovation on anything.
Yeah, and Ellen, if I just might, piggybacking on what Jim is saying, I mean, one of the things about replacing the highway barn is the highway barn would need to have sprinklers. Right. If we build a new highway barn, it's gonna have to A, comply with EPA's requirements for stormwater runoff, and B, have sprinklers. So yeah, we might be building the same kind of building or office space in the same kind of building, but to meet those additional code requirements is not cheap.
Right.
Yeah, half of the library project is bringing the building up to code.
Right. Yeah, okay. So that's everything on so far as we know it. So I guess you might as well, for everybody to review the sort of time frame. I mean, when you get back, hopefully there'll be a school budget, or both budgets will have been approved by their school committees.
So, Minuteman has approved their budget, so that number I don't expect to change. Nashoba is having their public hearing on March 1st and a vote on March 8th. So their budget should be finalized on March 8th.
Okay. And then you'll just work on, I mean, in terms of us seeing the actual more final budget will be end of March? Is that, before the warrant gets, I guess it's.
Yeah, so Finance Committee is planning to hold their public hearing mid-April, with town meeting pushed back a week and a half, 2 weeks. That gives us a little more time, so I think before school vacation week is when they were looking to hold their public hearing, to finalize it before it goes to print, but, mine's pretty much done other than doing my final recommendations when I see the numbers, so. The only other item we don't have yet is liability insurance, so we're waiting on the liability insurance number, but that should be in any day now.
It does seem that health insurance numbers, all the numbers I've been seeing are 8%. So, there was one year it seemed like people were getting wildly different things, but it seems like 80% is just, that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, it definitely depends. Nashoba's actually in the Maya Trust, and they were at about 5%, but back when I was in Swampscott, we were in Maya, and it was, 2 and 3%, and then we had like a 24% increase one year, because you have one or two big claims, and it just, because there's so few people in it, it just throws the whole percentages off. So being in smaller groups, that certainly has an effect. So right now, we are lucky that, it's 8%, but we don't have a ton of employees in health insurance, so hopefully the overall impact won't be significant.
Okay, let's move on to the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee and their memo and recommendations, and I didn't look to see who was,
Chief Solisi and Jesse are representing, I believe, although Chief Benoit is on again, Steve Nadeau is on, they're all on the traffic safety, but
well, thank you guys. So I actually got to sit in on their last meeting just to see what was going on. It was fascinating. It was actually fascinating. I liked hearing it, and had the same, as someone who lives on a private road with public access, I wanted to wave my hand and explain to the person who was calling why what she's asking for is maybe something that the realtor might have not mentioned to her, but I think the highway does an amazing job on small roads like ours, so thank you to Steve and your crew. But so to the proposal here, do we want to jump right in with the recommendation? Or
well, I
is there
think
any-
Chief, are you gonna start? I think you and Jesse were the designated spokespeople.
Sure, no problem. So,
Oops, he just.
He has a new puppy, maybe that's where he went.
okay. So we put together this memo
for the board to recognize
or actually authorize the 25 miles an hour throughout the town of Stowe for thickly settled areas that are non-posted non-posted roads that meet the two requirements. One, that they are thickly settled, and the other one is that they are owned by the town of Stowe. So it's going to be either one. Right now, we have about 28 roads that are town-owned public ways within a thickly settled area, and about 30 roads that are private way that are maintained and applied for public safety. If you look through the map that we sent out on the memo, it's going to be the roads that are affected by this new regulation will be the roads that are highlighted in red but with a black border, and also roads that are with dotted lines. So those will be the roads that meet the criteria that they're either thickly settled, that are public way with no posted speed limit, or that they are private way with no posted speed limit at all. And so those will be the roads that are affected, which if you continue down further, you can see of all the public ways with no posted speed limit, which is that first grid of roads starting with Adams, Apple Blossom, but what's going to be affected by this regulation is going to be the private ways, town maintained, no posted speed limit, and then the public ways thickly settled. So it's not every single public way in Stowe, it's just these thickly settled, which the law allows the SelectBoard to regulate. It's going to have a good effect for the police officers. It's going to also put people on notice, because some people are like, we don't understand what's the speed limit. Is it 30? Is it 40? What's the speed limit through here? We're looking for support. We actually are looking for support through the ARPA fund to purchase the signs that you can see in the memo that would go around to the entrance points around Stowe, which would state, thickly settled, 25 town-wide unless otherwise posted. So that's pretty much just a summary. Oh, there we go. So the public ways not posted, that's just the overall listing of the public ways in Stowe that have no posted speed limit. If you continue up, then we can see that the map that I was talking about does have the roads that are listed, the roads that are shown with the red indication with the black border are going to be the affected roadways. We have received probably a large amount of complaints, and especially in the Harvard Acres area. And you can see that where most of those roads are on the map would be affected. We do get a lot of complaints on speeding traffic in that area, but also some of the other roadways in town that are not going to be affected. They're going to be the solid red lines throughout the map, and it's only going to be the dotted red lines would have the effect on this regulation. So it's not every single road. And also, any public way that has a posted speed limit now would not be affected as well either. So, Jesse, you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered it well, Chief. Thank you. Happy to answer questions.
Just on your chart, so the listing of the roads, this was just a visual thing. So there's the ones that are highlighted in a like grayed out, those are the roads that are gonna be actually, to try to translate from the map to these lists. Like in the public ways, no posted speed limit, it starts with Box Mill Road. Is that group?
I don't think it's meant to be grouped. I think
Oh,
it's just,
oh,
I
that
think
was
it's
just
just
a
a
visual.
function of the,
Okay,
Yeah,
I had the
it's
same
not-
question, but if you go down further.
I saw that earlier too. I think
Yeah.
it's just grouped in flags.
oh, okay. Thank
So,
you.
but
Yeah,
the
that's what I was
public
trying-
ways,
It's the-
no posted speed
it's
limit
the
is the
second
total
two.
list of all the roadways
This is
that don't
everything.
have posted speed limits on them. If you continue down further where it says private ways, town maintained,
Yeah.
that would take effect. That would take, the regulation would take effect on those roadways there, as well as if you continue down
Oh,
further, the public
always.
ways that meet the thickly settled definition. So that don't have any posted speed limit on those as well.
Got it, okay. I was trying to read more into the colors.
Yeah,
than I
no,
should. Okay.
absolutely.
Chief, is there a quick definition of thickly settled?
Quick definition.
Or Jesse?
Yes.
It's general, go ahead. Yep.
No, go ahead, Jesse. I'll talk.
I was gonna say, it's put into the statute, into the, chapter 90, the definition. And essentially, when you have properties or homes that are spaced closer than 200 feet to one another for a period of a quarter mile or more. And so I had Malcolm in my office using GIS, be able to kind of run that calculation and come up with some of these tables here for roadways that met both of the statutory requirements. So the thickly settled as well as the no posted speed limit.
Great, thanks.
I have, since we were talking about this over the last, I think it came up over the last few months, I've been noticing how many towns around us do have this, 25 unless otherwise posted, which was the first thing that I hadn't noticed probably previously, but also the 25 is actually pretty slow. And when you're on a road like Red Acre or Boxborough or even Taylor, it totally makes sense. I was walking on Taylor yesterday and felt like I was taking my life in my hands. So, I'm all for it. I think it's gonna take drivers a lot of adjusting and, maybe there'll be a lot of warnings being given out, but I think it's a great idea. And especially in Stowe roads that are largely small and windy and narrow, I think it's great, so.
Yeah, I can tell you that over the past few months since we've started this traffic committee, we've been increasing on the police and our enforcement. However, the warnings have still been steady. We write very large amount of warnings compared to actually citing operators.
Mm-hmm.
So we're about safety and education, and we're going to continue that enforcement.
Any questions or comments?
I have a quick comment. I was driving home this evening and saw a sign that said, speeding tickets available ahead.
Always nice to have a
I
little
think it was
humor.
in Concord, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
I saw that too.
Yeah.
I have several questions, Madam Chair.
Yes, please,
So,
go ahead,
okay,
jump.
Good evening, Chief, how are you?
Well, Jim, thank you.
I'm supportive, don't take my questions as an indication that I'm not supportive, I'm just trying to understand. My first question, so I'm a little confused. I thought that the annual town meeting vote in 2017 took care of this, but you're sort of suggesting that in addition to that, we have to change the traffic rules and regs, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so the ATM vote just kind of authorize it, but then we have to actually implement? Okay, Denise is nodding yes, okay, thank you. I think I actually get the map, and my question is, you know, I'm glad to see Harvard Acres, I didn't realize that was not posted. My question is, some of these roads are so small, are you at all concerned that 25 miles an hour might be too fast for some of these roads? Like Elm Ridge, you know, some of the shorter dead ends or the short circles.
So we're actually lowering it right now, so it would be 30 without it posted.
It'd be 30 without it. Okay.
Without us taking this, this regulation, yes.
And why is that? Do we have is that by state law that it's?
Yes, that's by state law.
Okay,
Wow.
all right, that answers that. So the big thing not addressed here are town-owned public ways not thickly settled. And is that because we just don't have the authority without going through that complicated DOT process?
That is correct.
Okay. Last question is for you or maybe Jesse. You know, one thing I learned from several years on complete streets is that changing the speed limit doesn't necessarily make people go slower. They drive according to the conditions of the road. So is the intent here to actually make people go slower or to enhance the enforcement opportunities in an attempt to make people go slower?
I think it's gonna be both.
Okay.
I think one is gonna be able to help the officers by looking at what we have planned out here and say, this is exactly what the speed limit is on this road now. And I also think it's gonna send a reminder, those signs that are gonna be at the entrance points, that Stowe is trying to be a safe community and share the roads. Also, we are taking other steps to try to make our roadways safer as part of this committee, doing other traffic reminders such as our speed feedback signs as well. So I think there are other avenues to help people travel slower, traffic calming devices, but this is just one of many things that we are doing.
Okay, fair enough. Tool in the toolbox. Thank you.
Well, that, actually, what Jim was just asking reminded me, when I'm looking at the map, so the sign, the example says, you know, 25 townwide unless otherwise posted. But if we have roads that we technically can't change, like basically Taylor Road, Boxborough Road, which I consider particularly Taylor Road being extremely dangerous, even though I guess it's not thickly settled, right? I mean, that's why it's not marked on the map. So is the default that it would still be 25 but it's just not posted, or is that not really what our wording is gonna say?
I think Taylor Road's posted.
It is
Oh,
posted.
is it posted?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Taylor Road is posted.
Oh, okay. See, I'm still not getting this map then, okay.
I think it's either 35 or 40. 30, I don't know.
I think all the black ones.
Yeah.
Have a posted
All
sign on
They
it.
already
They
have
already
posted.
have posted
That's what I'm
signs.
totally missing.
Yeah.
Our public ways with posted speed limits.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay,
And those can't easily be changed
and we can't,
unless there's
that's
some-
why we can't change
That's why
it,
we
because
can't
they're
change
already,
them.
right, got it,
Yeah.
got it.
Like, we're not changing 117.
Well, I figured 117 was also partly because it's a
Right.
numbered road, right?
Right.
I mean, that's that whole issue that came up with the high school and,
Right.
okay. Any other questions or comments? Denise, did you have anything you wanted to add on?
Not to that, Chief, were you gonna talk about the upcoming ARPA requests as part of this discussion tonight?
Sure. So we are requesting support for about $15,000 for our committee to initiate evaluation of pressing transportation safety concerns with our traffic policy that we put in place. Having, and I'm quoting, but having the funding focused on design engineering will provide for procurement of traffic counts, peer review of potential safety measures, and performance of other small-scale engineering tasks throughout the year. And this will allow the committee to be more responsive to residents and to queue up more sophisticated studies for upcoming town meeting consideration. So by having this avenue, we can immediately respond to complaints and have the funding available between our committee and all four of us to respond. We do get, at the beginning of this, we were getting many complaints, maybe around 15 to 20 complaints every week. It's scaled back a little bit now, but we are still getting incoming complaints every meeting.
Well, why don't we take first the traffic rule amendment motion first, and then,
Madam Chair, I move to approve an amendment to the traffic rules and orders to reduce speed limits on applicable public and private ways as proposed by the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee.
oh, this, I didn't realize it was combined.
Second.
You can keep reading, go ahead.
Do them both? And further, I move to support the following ARPA funding requests put forward by the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. Signage to implement creation of new speed zones as proposed, delineation of a safety zone along Crescent Street in the vicinity of Town Center as proposed, funding for traffic engineering for studies and/or peer review of potential traffic mitigation measures as directed by the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee.
I second all of that.
Okay.
I have questions.
Yeah, well, Denise was gonna
sorry.
say something first then.
So I assume tonight you're just lending your support for them to apply for ARPA funding because we don't have those requests and the dollar amounts in front of you.
That was what my question was,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
right.
So you're just expressing support for them
Okay.
taking this approach.
Perfect.
And they have submitted a number of, I think probably all of these for the March 1st deadline, which will be discussed in March.
Fantastic.
Thank you, because that's why I was a little confused, that's why I thought it was gonna be separate, so, okay. But did you have an additional?
That was
que-
literally my
Okay.
question.
So any other comments? I mean, it seems like a good use of, I mean, I will support it because it does seem like it's a natural part of this.
No, and if I can just add for folks, so the
Yeah.
Traffic Safety Advisory Committee has a page on our website. They have all of the concerns and complaints that have come in and the meetings that they're discussed and links to the minutes. So folks
Great.
can track you can submit a request right online and then you can track it right through our website.
Great.
I just wanna say
You
that
rock.
This was not me, this was all them.
that third item,
You started it.
Yes, Jim.
funding for traffic engineering studies, that's great. That's how you set speed limits. You track it and then you set it at the 80th percentile.
Yep.
I have to say, even though I support this whole thing, I am skeptical of the idea that you label something 25 miles an hour and poof, you expect people to actually go 25 miles. It just doesn't work that way.
I don't think that that's it. I think for me driving, it's there's a happy medium between the number of signs that like if there's too many signs,
Sure.
then maybe I ignore them. Not ignore them, but you know what I'm saying. But if
You heard that, Chief.
sorry, Chief. But if there's enough, then it's sort of like, okay, right, that's how fast I should be driving, and then I'm looking. So I think I'm excited about this because certainly, especially Harvard Acres, where there are so many children,
Right.
that it is just super important that we have.
Well, and I can easily support it if the default is 30 and we're actually lowering it. If for no other reason,
Right.
then it increases enforcement opportunities.
Right. I hear. Yeah.
So.
Yep.
But I like that third item in particular, because
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, so, all in favor?
I,
Aye.
It's unanimous. I just have one question. We had, when we created the committee, had a seat for a citizen, which we were hoping someone with engineering experience would step up, which they have not, and it's been almost 6 months. So I'm just wondering, I know at least, I assume there's been a few people, I know at least one person's contacted me several times. I'm fine if we decide that, I mean, I have to say, it's a very high functioning group. It's all staff and people who really know. I don't think we need another engineer, because I think that group of four know it, the issues quite well, but I just wanted to raise, like, if we wanna change the plan and not have a citizen on it at this point, given that we didn't get an engineer volunteer.
Yeah, I think, it seems like they're moving the four of them. I don't think we need to involve a too many cooks in the kitchen kind of situation, so I would be fine rescinding that.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
From my time on Complete Streets, when we dealt with the same issues for a while,
Mhm.
this is one of those areas where people bring their parochial concerns to the table. They just can't help themselves. Every once in a while, you get an Arnie Epstein, a guy who goes up to the 40,000 foot level, but it's so rare. They're obviously functioning very well. I don't know that we really need a resident.
It seems to me like you've got a great way on the website. It's an easy way for people to make requests or comments or complaints, and I think that serves the public, serves the residents, hopefully. So I'm on board.
I would request a motion to
Rescind
that.
Yep.
That
Is that,
position.
it's not exactly on the agenda.
Oh.
Is that okay?
I thought it was tied to the, well, I mean,
Well, let's see how it's phrased.
Well, I mean, you are permitted to vote on matters that aren't, it is listed about the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, you're taking a vote relative to their committee. I don't see that it's potential controversial matter, so I don't think that there's an issue with you taking a vote under this item.
Madam Chair, I move to rescind the at-large resident / engineer seat on the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee.
Second.
any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous, great, thank you. And really, you guys are doing a terrific job, thank you very much. And I thought you handled the one citizen I heard speaking quite patiently, so thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you.
great work.
Thank you for your support, appreciate it.
Okay, that's my agenda. Autism Awareness Month. Is Melissa on?
Kevin is on.
Kevin is on. Oh, right.
And you'll see they submitted a more in-depth.
Yes, so hi Kevin, if you're there. We got your email plan from you and Melissa.
It's Melissa, it's not Kevin.
It is.
I'm on his computer.
Okay, hi Melissa. So it basically sounds like, if it's okay, COVID rules wise, right, you're hoping to do more than less. Is that, do the indoor thing, do more contact sort of work. And I assume that at this point, we're talking the beginning of April, where do we think we're at? Do we think, given that the buildings are open, is that?
I mean, I don't see a problem with it at this point. Obviously, anything could change at the drop of a dime, but I think, as I mentioned earlier, and we will talk about in a little while, that I think we're moving in the right direction, that we could start to resume somewhat of a normal existence again. So I think having events that folks can look forward to in town, that goes along with the whole SpringFest conversation, that I think it's time we start to recognize and put forth some community events and social matters.
Right, great. So Melissa, it sounds like what you were hoping to do is have a speaker inside at Pompo, the lights outside, obviously. I'm trying to summarize it. You had the tables and stuff last year. So when you talked about the previous years, you'd hope to do something like that again this year? Or?
If restrictions allow, we'd like to have some, maybe not be inside as much and have the drive-through like we did. I think that was very successful. Mike was there, and the police had the blue lights, and that was very exciting for everyone. But if we can have something inside, maybe for CPAC or for, I know that in the spring Unified Baseball, I think it's the Mark, I can never say it, Fitterich. for sign up, you know, where people can go and do it all at once. It's kind of nice. We don't have that, like almost like a school fair where kids can go sign up. So this can be for a fair for these things. So hopefully people will be filtering in and out. At the very least, if we can't, then I'd like to at least be able to go in there for the volunteers that are helping me to warm up and use the restrooms. And be, you know, if we have to get something out of that area. It was really cold last year. We couldn't do that. We had balloons, they were popping even from the cold air.
Jeez, that's no fun.
And I think we ended up getting sleeted on while we were out there. The year before, originally, Mike was there for this, because he's always there, and it was, so
Jeez.
if there is an option inside, wonderful. If not, we will make do.
Yeah. So Denise, we can give permission to use inside, barring any major change in where we're at with the pandemic, hopefully the endemic at that point, yeah, okay, so that's do we need to take a vote on this? We do.
Yes, I would recommend, based on the request, I think we can easily, accommodate that. We'll work with Melissa and Kevin to, if there are any potential changes or COVID restrictions that have to go back in place, we'll certainly work with them. But at a minimum, we could have the room open for the bathrooms. I don't see any issue with that, even if something were to change. So we're happy to work with them and have a successful event again.
Great. Any questions? Or actually, do you have anything else you wanted to mention before I ask the board for questions?
I don't think so. I think that is it. I did already speak to Laura Greeno, and reserve the room. So I made sure I did that too. And I think we maybe have asked for 10 or 12 lights. I think we have 12 or 14. They seem to be getting a little dimmer the older they are with the solar. If they don't mind going up 1 or 2 lights, that will be wonderful.
Any questions or comments for Melissa?
No, I just want to thank you for kind of spearheading this again. This is a fantastic event, and I think I appreciate that you're doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we'll hope for good weather for you. So Jim, would you
I
like
agree
to
with all that.
motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve indoor and outdoor events for Lighted Up Blue Autism Awareness on April 2nd from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Pompasitic Community Center, including the parking area as proposed by organizers Kevin and Melissa Whalen.
Second?
All in favor?
Hey.
I say, I love these drive-throughs at Pompo too. I think it's a wonderful use of that space. It just seems like we didn't know how useful it would be during COVID, but it's really, I'm glad you can use it that way. So, thank you, Melissa, for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you all for supporting us. Have a good night.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you too.
The Select Board Annual Report for 2021 was in the packet. Anybody have changes? Did I forget anything?
Found 2 small typos and I can't tell you right now, but if I could send them to you later, I
So
would.
if you would send them directly to Phoebe, who helped, who
Absolutely.
she was in
Yep.
charge of editing, and so she has the current draft, so
Great.
that would be great.
I had
Yes.
I had one. It was the bottom of the first page, and it just it's a tiny one, but it's kind of a big one. It says along with our staff, Kathy Sfera and Jesse Studman, but they're not select board staff, they're town staff.
Good point.
So if we can just
Excellent.
change that, that would
Okay.
be great. But no, it was great. I think it was lots of color in it, so yeah.
Yeah, I like the variety.
Jim, anything, did you catch anything, or?
No, I didn't. I thought it was good.
There's a lot going on, when you start
Busy.
summarizing the years, like, especially just the number of people that we have brought on it was pretty exciting, actually. It's like, and yes, I think, aren't we very close to Joyce's anniversary date, right?
March 1st?
March 1st.
Wow.
Really?
I know, it's already been a year, right?
Yep.
She might feel like it's been longer. So,
Alright.
I'll make a motion. Madam
Yes,
Chair,
please.
I move to approve the 2021 annual report for the Select Board as amended for inclusion in the 2021 Town of Stowe report.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. ARPA.
Ooh, please present this list to us.
So there is one minor change. I originally had the amount at 500,000, but Ellen corrected me this morning that it was 600,000 that you guys voted. So I made Joyce rewatch it, and there was a lot of conversation that night about 5s and 3s and 7s. So yes, 600,000 was allocated for capital. So I have added, the second to the last item, a new phone system for all 5 buildings. We have been actively getting proposals off the state bid list. This would allow us to lease a new phone system. This is the first sort of 15 months of the lease to cover the remainder of this fiscal year and all of next fiscal year, in all 5 buildings, which is huge. It's voice over IP. It has, you can plug in a phone anywhere. It allows remote access. There's a web component. It's night and day to the Centric system that we have now. It would be operating on our Comcast cable lines and eventually a T1 line. Currently, we're still operating copper phone lines in every building. When it rains, it's static. My phone line is just static every day. Obviously, Verizon wants to get away from copper lines anyways. So I've actually worked with this company in my prior 2 communities, mainly because they are on the state bid list. And now that they have this cloud version, which allows a leasing option, which they never did in the past. You used to have to buy the whole phone system and implement it. So I did add that on to the list. Just briefly, we've talked about tasers for the police station. The current tasers are not easily differentiated from a firearm, so this would make them all brightly colored and have some additional capabilities that they don't currently have with their tasers. In addition, this would allow 1 taser per every sworn officer. Currently, they're sharing tasers, so again, not a good practice to be in. So that would allow for tasers. The next 2 items are both the defibrillator request. Excuse me, the first one, 35,500, is for all of the non-public safety buildings. The fire chief has applied for a grant for the 49,500 for the public safety police and fire defibrillators. So that would cover the vehicle and the stationary defibrillators, and then multiple defibrillators for the different buildings under the 35,000. The current defibrillators we have different ones throughout the buildings. They're old. They are not updated with the latest and greatest options. Currently, you have to physically go to every defibrillator, look at the equipment, look at the battery life, look at the pads. This one, they're Bluetooth. You can go on an app, see what the status is. There are no more children-sized pads and adult-sized pads. It's sort of a one-size method. And this would make them all standard across the board. So this would be huge for the buildings. It would also add an additional defibrillator to this building. We currently just have 1 on the first floor. Where we, between us and Pompo with the amount of foot traffic, it's great to have some additional resources if need be. Surge protectors at Pompo. This is an item that pains me. Actually, the surge protectors went several years ago when they were still in warranty, and apparently no one submitted for their replacement, so now we own the cost of fixing them. So not all of them went. The ones that are still operating, apparently there's been a recall on, and we will get those replaced, but we have to cover the cost of replacing the older ones that died 2 years ago.
There's a lot of surge protectors, right? I mean,
Yes,
right?
it is.
It just seemed like a huge number for,
Can
Well,
you
it's-
explain what
it's-
it is? It's not like the plug.
No, it's not like a plug. I mean, these
Okay.
operate sort of the heating system, the pump system down there. These are like massive.
kind of surge
Yeah,
protectors.
yeah. Again, I too had the same question.
You did your homework, thank you.
Sudbury Bridge, so this is engineering work, to then plan for the work that needs to be done there. So this will get some of the design work done and out of the way, potentially allowing us to either apply for grant funding or some other mechanism to fund the actual work.
What do we mean? Do we mean the bridge by where Track Road hits Sudbury Road? Is that what we mean by Sudbury Bridge?
Yes. Steve, are you still on? Are you listening?
Yeah, I don't know which one.
It must be, right?
If it's Sudbury Road, yeah.
Yes, it's this bridge over the Assabet with a wooden deck.
Yes.
So it's the one just as you go down Sudbury Road, cross over Assabet, track road's on the left. So that is the bridge.
It's where the kayak put in is
Right.
down the, yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Automated gate at Pine Bluffs. Specifically during COVID, but I know it's been a problem ongoing. We have folks that are hanging out there off hours. Police are doing patrols regularly. Last summer, I paid police officers to, I mean, it was part of their duties, but we had police officers going and locking and unlocking the gates during the week to keep out potential issues. In my opinion, this is a small price to pay to have it secured, keep folks out. There would be a sensor, so if people are in and it's locked, it will allow them to leave the area. The neighbors, it will hopefully ease up some of the concerns from the neighbors. We get a lot of calls from the neighbors in the summer about Pine Bluff, so hopefully this will be a step in the right direction to making that just a daytime enjoyable spot and not evening activities that are taking place. Complete streets design, so obviously some planning work for the complete streets projects. And I should have pulled up what this covers.
Is it this intersection?
This one? Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what it is. I'll come back to that while I'm pulling it up. The body worn cameras, we were awarded a grant for those cameras. It's subject to contract negotiations. That is still ongoing, so if we come to terms with the police department at a cost-effective manner, then perhaps the grant will fund that. If not, it's not required to implement if you buy them outright versus grant funding. So there's different requirements for the negotiation process. 35,000. The Asphalt Cutbox, something that Steve and the Highway Department, they've been borrowing and renting to try and get asphalt heated in the wintertime. So something like that during pothole season would be huge for us. And being able to have our own, to be able to make the necessary repairs really anytime the department is able to is really important, especially these days. Obviously, we touched upon the phone system. And then the Hartley Road widening request, I did, in my conversations with the superintendent, he does plan to submit that last year. If you'll recall, it was submitted last year through the police department. There was no school funding, no school support. Excuse me. No one stood up at town meeting on behalf of the school in support of the project. It did not go forward. The superintendent feels it is a priority. It is a safety concern of his. So they have submitted the request for this year. I felt that in the essence of it is a safety concern from both the police and the school, instead of going through the town meeting process, that we would submit it through this funding so that we can actually hopefully take care of it sooner and by the next school year.
You skipped the replacement vehicle.
Oh, I'm sorry. The replacement vehicle for the building department, they are in need of 2 vehicles, one now and one in a few years. Both the building inspection vehicle and the facilities truck are both on their way out. We've been spending a lot of money to try and maintain the aging vehicles that we have. So the plan is to replace one this year, and then hopefully next year or the year after, if we can get another year out of it, would be to replace the other one. The 35,000 for the complete streets, yes, Jim, it is for design and engineering funds to discuss and advance sidewalk improvements on Crescent Street from Hartley Road to Warren Road. So it is a project listed as number 7 on the town's prioritization plan. And advancing the project through the design would allow us to apply for up to $400,000 in construction funds through the Complete Streets program. So we That's obviously a hot spot for students walking, a lot of school-aged kids between Pilot Grove and Hale and Center. And then more and more students are walking to the library after school. And so this would look to make that area safer for everybody. I did share this list minus the new phone system with capital planning. They did review it, didn't really talk about it at their, not our last meeting, at our first meeting. They discussed that they did not feel the need to have to weigh in on these projects because even though they meet the criteria for capital, they do not require town meeting approval. And so there was no real reason for them to weigh in on those projects.
Go ahead.
I had a question about the tasers. Is the idea that we would take the ones that are currently in use out and replace them with new ones?
Yes.
Okay.
This would, and I can actually, now that I'm in the system, I can actually tell you the specifics on it. So, this would replace all of the up the actual quote. This would replace, I think it's 12 tasers.
Okay.
Yep, so 15 in total, 12 for the right hand and 3 for the left hand. It would allow for it to be opposite your firearm so that again, there's less chance of mistaking your firearm for your taser, as in a recent incident that we hope to never happen around here.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
So I actually was the one who opposed the Hartley Road widening at town meeting, because the school district decided at some point to flip the original design. The whole point in the way we designed the two entrances was because of the number of cars parking on 117. Basically, rather than letting their kids take the school bus, but there was too much, that was getting very dangerous. And so we created a extraordinarily wide circle and parking area for people to get off the road. And then at some point, the district decided it's better to get them off of,
It was
rather
COVID.
than, what's
It was
that?
during COVID.
No, it's been before that.
No,
Well,
that's when they moved the drop off to the back during COVID.
only doing COVID,
Yeah.
okay. So I guess I'm just concerned why, I mean, if the school really wants to do it, then they should pay for it, but it was an explicit design of the school project to put the buses off of Hartley Road because of that exact reason, we wouldn't have the volume of cars going up Hartley Road. So if they're gonna go back after COVID to the original plan.
They're not. That's
But why not?
I don't know. But
I mean,
that is
I
the
think they
issue.
have to argue, I wanna hear argued why they're not gonna use it the way it was designed, because, I mean, we spent a lot of money to design it that way. We even that parking lot is permeable pavement, which was also expensive, but we did it with this larger plan in mind, and I think the sort of reaction to, I've actually raised it as a private citizen, I raised it to the Green Advisory Committee, because this is a green issue to me. It's like, we're encouraging people to drive their kids to school, rather than having, the only public transportation we have in town is those school buses. So, I think that I just think it's a poor use of funds.
Yeah.
I'm not, to be clear, I'm not clear on exactly what they're hoping to get out of it either. I'm just telling you, as a parent of school-aged children who are there,
So it just started in
that
COVID.
it just started during COVID, and for whatever reason, we got a notification that said that that was how it was going to be moving forward, and so I don't know, I wasn't privy to all the discussions as to why it was changed, and I'm sure that knowing the principle and that there was a reason behind it, I'm not 100% sure what that is.
Could I add 2 cents?
Yep.
I understand what you're saying, Madam Chair, but I think as well as I do, one of the unfortunate truths of life with a regional school district is that when you build them a facility, there comes a day when you hand it over and they can do whatever they want to with it. And you're obligated to pay for certain things like maintenance and certainly Hartley Road. If they were here, they would be able to articulate some reason why they changed it. I don't know what it is. But the simple fact is that we don't have the right to second guess it, I don't believe. Not,
We don't? We second guess their overall budget.
yeah, but not their operations and how they decide to use the facility that we hand them. So the way I'm looking at it is there is a problem on Hartley Road between the hours of 7:30 and 8:30 every day. And if $42,000 solves it or goes a long way to solving it, I'd like to see us spend that. I wouldn't, and I'm glad we won't be borrowing it. I think it's an unfortunate fact. I hear what you're saying, that, I'm sure you did design it that way. Why did they change it? Why are they encouraging parents to drive and not take the school buses? I don't have the answers to those questions. I don't know where we're gonna get them, and even if we did get them, I don't know what we can do about them. That's unfortunately, I think, just a fact. And I'd like to actually solve the problem. And this is fairly cheap.
I mean, my feeling, the reason I put it on this request is, as Jim mentioned, I mean, we own the road. So if this goes forward to town meeting and town meeting approves it, we have to pay for it anyways. So I'm fine with putting it before town meeting, but then I still have to cover the funding through free cash, if it's not through ARPA funds. So that's the only reason I chose to put it under this category was, talking to the superintendent, he said, I plan to, we will be there, we will make sure we stand up and defend it if need be, and, so, quite frankly, it doesn't impact me one way or another if we move forward with this, but I'm gonna have to pay for it if it happens, if it's approved, so.
No, and I don't know that town meeting is the right place, I mean, but I do feel like the school should have an explanation for why they, if they switched it just during COVID, why wouldn't they switch back? And, cause, I mean, there's no way that circle incorporates the number of cars that needs to pick up, and, I mean, that's why they wanna widen Hartley, which then is a road that, oh, good, so people can fly up to Hale now, cause it's gonna be that much wider, it's, I think, I mean, and again, ARPA funds are a once in a lifetime thing, and yes, I love that we can take it off of the capital budget, that's, but I also feel like I still wanna use it wisely, and, so.
Well, you can see it was the last one. I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be honest with you, and then I put it on because I felt like I was trying to distribute the funds through all of the departments. And they have two requests this year. They're actually requesting funding for I think the gym floor. Let me see, they have something else that's sort of small money. Yeah, the Hale Gymnasium floor refinishing, they're also looking for, so, it's only 19,000, but I figured that can go through the full vetting process.
Yeah.
But I'm fine either way. Either way, this does not total the 600,000, this comes to 548 if everything as is stands. At this point, I'd ask to leave a balance because obviously as we go out to bid and procure things, prices are changing both up and down. And if the grant comes through, then I would be able to allocate to something else, so we hold that aside for other projects.
And that's, I was gonna ask that, these are all estimates, obviously, we don't have firm bids for.
Well, we actually have for like the tasers, the defibrillators, the automated gate, body worn cameras, we actually have quotes.
So you do have.
We have, because there was part of the capital form that they're supposed to
right,
submit
right,
actual
submitted.
requests,
Great.
quotes, so we do have it for a number of these things, the phone system, we have it. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Sorry, I do not wanna beat a dead horse on this Hartley Road widening, but I'm remembering more why I had so many questions about it when it came up at town meeting, and while I completely I get what you're saying as far as, you know, we don't own the building anymore. Widening the road seemed to me to be incredibly reactionary to COVID because as a parent, I mean, my kids rode the bus, but there were a lot of parents who chose for their kids not to ride the bus during COVID. And that was part of why there were so many backups. And so now that more kids are riding the bus, now that we're talking about the mask mandates being lifted in the school, now that all of these things and we're getting more back to normal, my genuine concern about widening this road is that it was reactionary to COVID. Now, having said that, I also feel like it's something that we may need to talk about, you know, should Hale expand at some point? Should Center expand at some point? We're going to be getting more children in this, you know, like, there are gonna be things that are gonna be changing in the school system and with numbers and so maybe widening the road now makes sense, but that's sort of where I'm at, is it really did seem like a reaction to a temporary going on 3-year problem.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yeah.
I didn't interrupt, just
No, I just, those were my more 2 cents.
So Denise, there's enough hesitancy on this item. Can we hold it and can we get some answers from the school district
Absolutely.
to, I think mainly 2 questions. Number 1, why did they switch the design, as Ellen says, from having cars go in the circle and buses should have gone in the back up Hartley? And 2, has there been a change since COVID? I have to say, I remember before COVID, when we were considering using the old fire station as the parking lot for the South Acton train shuttle. I decided to take a little ride over there at about 7:30 to see what it'd be like. And this is before COVID.
Yeah.
Go tear my hair out saying this is the worst possible place for this thing.
Right.
But my memory could be flawed. So can we find out just an answer to those 2 questions, and then maybe there'll just be a little comfort to go either way?
Yeah.
Because now you've got me wondering.
Right.
Would you like answers, or would you like me to invite someone to the next meeting?
I'm sorry, I can't.
Would you just like answers, or would you like me to invite a school rep to the next meeting to discuss it?
I'd love to have the principal, or someone from the building that, is sort of, I mean, the superintendent's up here, but the principal's the one who can sort of explain what he sees or she sees. I actually don't know who's.
It's a he.
He, sorry.
Both schools are
schools
male
are youth, yeah.
principals.
Yeah.
Um,
And if that's not, if that's,
Yeah, it may mean, maybe the
Yeah.
facilities, I don't know who, but I'll reach out and see if they can send someone.
well, whoever put it forward, do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know where this came from.
Right.
Yeah, just from my experience in capital planning, facilities is sort of hit and miss. I'd rather talk to the principal. They're both operations questions about center, right?
right.
Well, it's Center and Hale.
Right.
Center and Hale, that's
Yeah.
true.
I mean, the superintendent may wanna come and speak on behalf, I don't know. I will reach out tomorrow, although he's on vacation.
Well, I would just say
but-
if he's the one who's saying that he's gonna put it
He
on it,
told me he would,
then he can
he
come and
told me
speak
they would
on
be
it.
standing up in support of it at town meeting. I don't know who they is,
Well,
but he made sure to say there would be support from the school at town meeting.
Those
It-
they are the ones we wanna talk to.
Yeah, that's who we wanna talk to, because
And
if we
Jim
can
hadn't asked,
clear
I
it,
would've.
if we can clear it with ARPA funds, then they don't need to come to town meeting and
Right.
fight their case.
Right.
Right,
Okay,
so I will
Thank-
certainly do that.
thank you.
Sure, so
All
do you
right,
wanna-
so yes, a motion for the rest of the
Sure.
ARPA requests.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the capital ARPA list as presented by the town administrator at this meeting with the exception of the Hartley Road widening item.
Second.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
I just noticed there was another part of the Traffic Safety Committee's report. They talked about the safety zone on Crescent Street, which I realized I don't think they meant it to be a motion or anything, but maybe we could just talk about it another time. I mean, because I think it was an interesting, sort of talking about the same issue of a safety zone along Crescent Street in the vicinity of Hartley Road, Library Hill Road, and Town Center Park, which I know some people have raised it this winter because of ice and stuff on the sidewalks and kids walking, so sort of tied to that traffic study issue, so I think we'll just put it on hold as something, if we talk to them again, we can ask them more about that, but.
Hopefully
was
that'll
pretty
come up
good.
in their ARPA fund application, right? Cause that falls in the,
Oh, yes.
that's
right.
what it, yeah.
Yeah, it seems
Yeah,
like it's sort of
Yes, it
overlaps
is
in
one of
that.
their actual requests, so they
Oh,
do
okay.
have more detail
All right.
associated with the request,
Perfect,
so.
all right, great. Okay, now we go on to the mask covering policy. You know,
Yes, let me just get
Yep.
back out of where I am and scroll back down. So obviously, we talked about earlier, it's been sort of all over the news. COVID numbers are decreasing. I mentioned earlier that townwide, we are just about 4% with COVID cases. As I mentioned in my memo, the townwide, we are at a full vaccination rate of 83% with an additional 9 that's partially vaccinated on top of that. As far as employees are concerned, we're at a 90% vaccination status. And I did jinx myself because I said I have not sent an employee for testing since mid-January, and that is not true as of today. But I think we are clearly moving in the right direction. I think the reason for the mask policy, I would say, has subsided somewhat. I mean, there should still be some requirements under DPH if someone is exposed, if someone is coming off of their 5-day quarantine, et cetera. But I believe the time for a mandatory mask policy, in my opinion, has ended. I have spoken to a number of communities. I put just sort of a snapshot of communities that have or are repealing their mask mandates, including this region. Nashoba is, as of March 1st, they will be mask-free or mask optional for the school district. Bolton is rescinding theirs on February 28th. Lancaster was reviewing it. Sudbury's ending is March 7th, and so on. So I know there are still employees that are uncomfortable. They will continue to wear masks based on their personal situation, and that is absolutely acceptable. We will continue to do whatever we can for keeping them safe and comfortable. But my request for you tonight is that we rescind the existing mask policy effective 11:59 p.m. on February 28th, so that there's no question that as of March 1st, it's over. I would then do the same with the municipal buildings. As you know, the Board of Health had chosen not to put a mask mandate in place townwide. They felt that the numbers were not high enough. We've been getting questioned from residents as to why they still have to wear masks when they come in the building, since the state has announced that, they did not feel that mandatory mask policies were necessary any longer. And you'll see that even places like Boston are starting to ease up on their requirements, no longer requiring proof of vaccination status and so on. So I ask you tonight if we can discuss rescinding that. Obviously, if something comes up again, if cases spike, I would implement something as I did prior to the need for a mandatory policy. But the hopes that if we needed to do it again, folks would follow it more closely and not disregard the internal mandate.
So my 2 cents are, one, I'd love to still have a sign on the front door saying masks are optional so that people feel comfortable wearing them if that's, if they're both for their own personal protection, but if they feel like that's the right thing to do. And I'm still concerned about any staff that might have to go into private homes for the work that they do. Does that, I wasn't sure how that would follow. I mean, I would not want someone going into a private home. Well, short of them having to declare whether they're vaccinated or not, I would feel like I would want them to still have masks on. I'm not sure how to handle that, so.
Okay.
I mean, in general, because the numbers are down, I wanted it to be tied very specifically to numbers, and the fact that the numbers came down so much since when you sent out the packet, that makes me far more comfortable, but there's just, I've just been really concerned about that we have town employees that have to go into private homes, and if they're not vaccinated, I'm very concerned with what that means for the people who are being exposed. So,
But I feel like if someone's coming into your home, you can ask them to put a mask on. Right? Like, we can't mandate it, but you can say to some, I mean, it's my house.
You can, but you have to be that kind of a person. There
That's
are people that are
Yes.
not gonna wanna, they're not that bold.
But
They could
I
be
don't,
highly
but to
uncomfortable
play devil's
and-
advocate, like, why do we need to put that on the person going into the house? Like, I appreciate that, but like,
it's our
So we can't
liability.
control it one way or the other. When that person goes into that house, we're not gonna be there and we can't control it, but we could perhaps say, please be courteous, ask if, I mean,
But I don't- and I don't know-
Are we thinking public safety? Are we thinking building department or?
yeah, I guess I would need
I mean,
more specific.
I'm assuming, I was thinking more building department and assessors, frankly.
Well, I'm not sure that the current policy even covers that.
We
Because it
didn't
covers
mention of it in
municipal
the.
buildings.
I thought it was just in the building, yeah.
Okay,
But, I certainly think I had a guy come in today to fix the washing machine. He had a mask on, he didn't care whether I had one or not, he had one. I certainly think that informally, the word can go out. Of course, when you go into a home, err on the side of caution and wear a mask. Is that a problem? I assume that's happening now.
I would say it's not a problem, but I think too, I don't know which one of you just said it, but are we differentiating between departments? Because obviously if there's an emergency and the police are running into a home for a break-in,
Oh, true.
they may not stop. Obviously, if the situation that they're going into is medical and there's a possibility of COVID, they mask up and do that. But I don't think our public safety folks are still masking up if there's an emergency that they're responding to.
We just say, people who are going in on a non-emergency basis. I mean, it seems to me right now, any vendor showing up at your home just out of politeness is doing that.
right.
I'm sure our staff are already doing that if they're going into homes. Let's just keep that status quo.
That would be fine.
All right, yeah, I'm just, I think of it as a liability for the town, because if someone did go in,
Sure.
so that's, and I realize it's sort of in this gray area that's not explicitly in this policy, but to me, it's in this lifting phase, it makes me a little nervous.
I think the chief would like to say
Chief,
something.
did you have something to weigh in on, please?
As far as the fire department, we do have OEMS protocols that still require us to wear masks for all medicals. So if the town does rescind the mask policy, we'll reduce our masks on investigations, but as far as medical emergencies, we will still be wearing our masks if we cannot determine exactly what the case is. So
Okay,
the police department's following the same pursuit. If they go into medicals, they will also be wearing masks at this time. So.
okay, great, thank you, appreciate
Thank
the
you.
clarification, Chief. Any other comment on the policy or the lifting of the policy?
I think it was no more than 2 meetings ago, Omicron was raging so much.
Yeah, I know.
So
Let's hope.
I'm skeptical of this whole thing, to tell you the truth, but I can't disagree with you that state health facilities, state health authorities are certainly quite clear that February 28th, March 7th, it's time to lift it. Federal's a little bit more ambiguous, but I'm fine with this.
I do like having Denise having the power to reinstate masking
Absolutely.
in the building is something that I feel incredibly comfortable with. I know that the superintendent is doing that as well. In that if the numbers start to climb again, then they're gonna start masking again in the schools. And I do think that that's the way that we move forward in this endemic phase of the pandemic and so I'm ready.
So, Madam Chair, I'm
Yes.
gonna modify this a little bit. I move to discontinue the town's municipal employee face covering policy enacted on January 11th, 2022, effective at 11:59 PM on February 28th, 2022.
Second,
All in favor?
I
Aye.
It's unanimous, great, thank you. Let's just hope we don't have to go back. Okay, so we have minutes from the last meeting, from February 8th, right?
Yeah.
Is there some, okay. Any changes, edits, corrections, questions?
No.
I'll take a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the minutes of February 8th, 2022 as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. And then, anything on correspondence? We didn't have, no, that's right, we don't have them, we don't have the full.
The only thing I did bring in, if any of you wanted to read it, was all of the channel lineup from the Comcast.
Wow.
So I have their full packet if you wanted to read the channels.
That on the front page.
But no, there was nothing else.
And I don't think, okay, I'm sorry, I had to remember. If there's anything else. So no comments on the correspondence. Alrighty then. Next,
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Alright, unanimous. Good night, everybody. Have a great vacation.
Thank
You certainly have earned it.
Enjoy.